think they can go very far.
I think it also speaks to why Hvost has been on the team since TI1, right? Because he's had some down periods where especially the community was giving him a lot of flack and being like, he used to be a great carry, now he's just overextending constantly, he's making a lot of mistakes.
Right.
Replace Hvost with a better carry player, and Navi has kept him the whole time. And I think it goes to show how important it is that you have chemistry between your players, that you have, like Ben said, like you have the whole morale boost, and that you're just an enjoyable guy to play with, because obviously the thing that people do not see in the games when they just watch, I mean, you will see the mistakes, right, and you will see the big plays, but you don't see what ties the whole team together. And if he is that key part that has kept Navi together for like these 5 years, then that is definitely a very good reason to keep him in the team, right? And as much as he has had down periods, I think he has had some outstanding games for Navi as well, where he's gone like out of control. To me, his biggest strengths are, I've talked about it previously, one-on-one matchups. If they can get that for him, he is a very good one-on-one player in the safe lane. And he also just stands for some of the games where we've seen like the one carry furthest ahead of the carry of the opposing team, like some actually 100% net worth leads where he has like 35k on his gyro and the enemy has like 17 on theirs. And it's like, you know, if he gets rolling, he gets rolling.
Now, it's funny that you mentioned that. I mean, earlier, of course, we saw Ferrari's piece, too, and just both of these players being 5 years with their team, being loyal, and the team being loyal to them. It's, of course, a mutual relationship. Now, Winter, we talked about LGD and maybe their flaw. You were mentioning that maybe they focus a little too much on securing a late game in their draft and trying to focus too much on building that up in-game. Is that something that the Navi should try to take advantage of?
Navi have shown that they can be very aggressive early on, but from what I've seen in the first few series, they have trouble as well. They are like C9, a little like C9. They can't finish the game when they have a good lead. Like a couple of games, I think they shouldn't have lost against MVP, I think. One of the games, they were leading by such a huge margin, but they couldn't finish the game. They made mistakes and they threw the game away. And against LGD might just have to, okay, we just need to pick late game because Navi is not going to be able to finish us off, because they are having trouble right now sieging high ground. So that might be the plan of LGD. And Navi has to make sure that they minimize their mistakes.
I mean, at the same time, C9 really turned a new leaf themselves today, right?
What
they
we saw from
C9
now. C9 is already they sorted out that issue. They are making less mistakes. They are more composed when they're going high ground. Navi has to go through the same phase as C9 did in the past 2 days.
Okay, so as we wait for the second match here on the main stream, let's talk a little bit just overall bigger picture here at TI5 when it comes to the draft and the meta that's developing. We were trying to look at percentages after day one, not as big of a sample size. After day two, if I'm not mistaken, Gyro still at 67% win rate, and obviously quite a few picks, number of bans too. Do you think Gyro's a hero where it's, if you can help it, just better to ban it out? Because if it's 67%, teams haven't really figured out a way to really play against it when you give it away.
He kind of, in a way, falls under the category of, like, him and Leshrac share a similarity in the sense that there's no, like, very clear weak phase of the game for the hero. He's great in lane, he's great in team fights, he's fast at farming, and he's super good late game with the rapier. So it's like, there's no direct weakness to exploit when you're playing against Gyro, and it's more about playing around the team. And he's just such a good follow-up too, right? In a lot of, if you look at a lot of carries, like say we compare him to an Anti-Mage, then Anti-Mage will maybe get more farmed super early if he has a really easy lane, but Gyro, you can join fights really early, and if anyone engages it for you, you can have such a massive impact. Even if you have a bad game, he can still be really useful with just his spells alone. So I just see him as a very strong hero for that reason.
I mean, Ben, so then from what I'm hearing, it sounds like Gyro, it's hard to just say, all right, we'll give Gyro, we'll take this hero as like a one-on-one counter, but overall it's like you just have to overcome it with execution and team play. Is that the best way to look at it?
I think there are some unexplored solutions to dealing with him. For example, you can get a pipe to mitigate his ultimate. We don't see pipe picked up very often.
That's true.
He does like a lot of damage at the start of the fight too. Something like a Centaur Ags upgrade I think would be pretty good, or even like a hero like Juggernaut, who I think can actually contest him 3-on-3 in the safe lane. And I think that teams are just used to, okay, we can't contest him, let's just let him free farm, and then they don't really tackle the problem. Similar with Anti-Mage, just like, we know he's probably going to own us late game, but let's worry about that later, right? I think they're looking at it a little bit, they're concentrating too much on a particular phase of the game, whereas Gyro, he's good at all phases. You have to think about the big picture. So I would just like to see teams explore a little bit more, maybe like Lifestealer. I don't know. The thing about Gyro, he wasn't picked a lot prior to this particular phase. He was like picked a lot at the start of 6.84. He got nerfed a little bit, and then he didn't really see that much play. So I think teams have been preparing a lot for Tusk, for Naga, and for Leshrac in the month prior to TI, and then they haven't looked as much as Gyro. So it's better just to ban it or take it yourself, because the like hard counter or even soft counter are still not really out there.
All right, Winter, what about you? What are your thoughts on Gyro?
I think Gyro is a hero where he has very little weaknesses, but I think one of the weaknesses that he has is overcome by having teammates. He has no survival ability. Like if you gank him, he's gonna be dead if there's no backup. But in the sense that you play Gyro as a very team-orientated carry, so you count on your team to bail you out if you get into a sticky situation. But in the past, we've seen teams deal with Gyro like what Ben said. You get a face rush carry like a Lifestealer with a Storm. You jump him first, and you kill him right away, because you need to get access towards... Gyro's usually behind the team fight. He flags off something in front, and he splashes on all your teammates. So you need someone to get your carry right in front of his face, and you just kill him from there. So, but with that being said as well, you need to pick it at a timing where there's maybe no Winter Wyverns as well, because there's a couple of supports that's really good at dealing with this, like the Dazzle, especially if you jump in with the Storm Lifestealer, that's a Grave. So then it counteracts your initiation.
All right, well, the draft for the next match is about to get started. Before that, let's take a quick review. One thing to point out is Cloud9 now cruising forward with 7 points, tied with Complexity, who are also showing a really strong start here at TI5. So, Winter, we were talking about Cloud9 before, and you said, well, they're kind of middle of the pack, but they're either going to surge upwards or downwards. Right now, they're on the rise. We'll have to keep an eye on that. Right now, draft for LGD versus Na'Vi going on in Game 1. We have started it just a few seconds ago, so we'll jump right into that and take a look at how this match pans out. Undying and Lesh being the first two bans, or first bans from each team, rather.
And there's the Naga ban from LGD. They probably saw Navi's last game, and like Ben said, if you're LGD, you're like, we'll just go late game against Na'Vi, where it seems like they struggle to end the game. But there's one hero late game that could get super annoying. It's just the Naga. And maybe in addition to that, the risk of Na'Vi perhaps being able to break base because of the Naga is also gone. Like, if you play a support Naga, one thing we've seen, for example, I think it's the clip I remember was Kuroki. You get a Blink Dagger, you blink in behind the buildings, and you sleep the team, and you take a tower. And it's like a no-risk play. You can just do it over and over again. If you struggle at pushing base, if you're not that organized at it, that's like a cheap way of doing it. So, better safe than sorry.
All right, and the hero that's been on the table for the whole week, Gyro, being picked up by LGD first.
Na'Vi will probably go for the Shadowfiend. I feel they've been favoring the Shadowfiend on the Raiden for Dandy a lot as well, and picking some combination of minus armor with Slada, Dazzle together with the Shadowfiend.
And yeah, I was gonna say, because since we have seen the Slardar Shadowfiend a couple of times from Na'Vi, it's a good combination in itself. But Slardar is actually a good matchup against Gyro, not in lane, but in the mid game. He has a way of catching. He amplifies the damage, and he hits really hard. And he's not afraid of the man fight when he has a BKB. He can actually just lay into Gyro one-on-one because of how powerful amplify damage is. So it could be a path for Na'Vi to go. Of course, if they do pick, let's say, Shadowfiend and Slaughter first, which I would really be surprised if they do.
Yeah.
Then there's a Dazzle for LGD. So
probably
you need to be
not.
careful.
SF Dazzle, I think, would be a...
SF Dazzle opener, or SF... Oh, Quamp's still in, so you kind of have to go for that. LGD will probably get their Shaker, and then... The question for Na'Vi is, do you want to go for a Slaughter somewhere down the road and play an offlane Quab? And then, if that's the plan and you want to counter the Gyro, you have to get rid of Wyvern and the Dazzle, I think, to be able to play the way they want to do that.
All right.
Or just ban Wyvern, I think, and take Dazzle. Or
vice versa. They play a really good Wyvern on Seneko, so they could do that.
I like that approach more with the Slardar as opposed to something like a Phantom Lancer, which we've seen picked somewhat to counter Gyrocopter. But Slardar is just generally more aggressive, and you're online much, much quicker. You get a Blink Dagger, boom, you start fighting people a lot. And it looks like LGD would take Dazzle in the first phase. I think that's not great if you're Na'Vi. Just because it plays so well against their playstyle in general. And they have very aggressive heroes with the Queen of Pain.
It's possible LGD. So this was the exact same opener we had against Secret, except the Gyro was a Lesh. And then, so what I mean is, Secret went for... No, they went SF Quap in the first game, the game they won. And LGD's opener was Gyro Shaker, right? Yes, it was Gyro Shaker. So I think the reason they might be going for the Dazzle here is that they want to keep their options open and not stick with one strategy the whole time and just get too used to getting that shaker in the opening 2 every single time. And in a way, this also, like what we talked about, they could simply just be preparing for the Slardar as well already here.
Yeah, I mean, Winter, what are your thoughts on the Chen and the Brood ban? I mean, the Brood, of course, we just talked generally, pretty good ban to take out in the second phase, but what about the others?
I think the Chen will be a huge problem if you have a co-op and your early game doesn't go that well. They probably know that Na'Vi is gonna be very aggressive early on, and they try to minimize like how much aggression they can throw on the table, because with Chen, Shadowfin, and co-op, you win your lanes, you push and you take towers. It's very powerful if everything goes on according to plan for Na'Vi.
Okay.
Bounty got all the way.
Yeah, seems to always slip by. Bounty Hunter making it all the way into the hands of Na'Vi.
So what does LGD need to do against this? They have Bounty Hunter. They have a lot of teamfight AoE. Luckily, they took out some of the heroes that are very good at sieging high ground or ending the game very early. But do you counter this by trying to 5-man a lot or out late game then, so that even if you give up track kills, you're not set that far behind in terms of the later phases of the game?
Well, they got the Wisp, and most of the time when LGD grab this, they get it with the Tiny. So I feel like that's
right.
Maybe almost already set. Another benefit of this is one way of dealing with Bounty that we've seen is to pick defensive lanes that are really difficult for him to gank early so he doesn't get any momentum. And if you've got an Io lane, Io can just tether into the carry that he's trying to gank and save him. You have Dazzle in another lane. It seems like a pretty good approach against Bounty to just limit his options really in the early game.
And talking from the LGD's perspective as well, that they seem to prioritize, like when they give away Shadowfin, they want to have the Wisp plus Tiny because it's really good versus the Shadowfin.
Yeah.
And what Secret did was they lane Shadowfin with a partner to counteract that. So
Right.
with Na'Vi picking the Bounty Hunter this early on, unless they switch it to a core, then you can actually allocate a support to lane with the Shadowfin. Otherwise, it's difficult. Once you place a Bounty Hunter as a support, you want to have another support on the safe lane, more or less.
Yeah.
So it's difficult to allocate one more support towards the middle lane.
Okay, and the Disruptor coming out after the Wisp pick as a response here for Na'Vi.
I think it's pretty interesting that LGD didn't ban Wyvern. I think when Secret played Na'Vi, they actually first banned Wyvern, even without playing the Wisp. So, I mean, I don't really think it would reveal too much for them, but it seems like they were waiting for Saneko's hero to possibly come out and then pick the IO from there.
I think they can still pick Wyvern if they swap the Bounty to a core position. It's still possible.
But why would you pick Disruptor over Wyvern
Right.
when you have Soneko as a Wisp counter in this game?
Probably they're already planning that they want to put the Bounty as a core. Then they want to throw their opponents off. Okay, they have a support Bounty. They pick another support
Okay.
Disruptor. We are not going to ban, like in the last ban, we are not going to take out Wyvern. And then you take Wyvern. Maybe that's the plan.
But is that worth it then? Is it worth it to get both Wyvern and Disruptor? That seems a little overkill to me, and it means they have very, very little ways of initiating.
Yeah, that could also be a problem if they have Wyvern to finish their lineup. The only initiation they have is the Curse, and the rest of the heroes don't really have any means of stopping or just starting a fight. So that could, I mean, Glimpse is decent in terms of situations.
The reason I would have liked Wyvern over Disruptor as well is how well it sets up for a Requiem and a Sonic Wave. Like, you actually pull them together, and then you just line them up and knock them down, right? Whereas Disruptor, lining a good kinetic field that holds 2 or 3 heroes in place is so much more situational. There's so many more counterplays. They can even relocate out of it if they get Tiny caught in the kinetic field as long as Wisp isn't in it. So, I'm not sure. It might just, I'm actually very surprised because Na'Vi have such a good... I mean,